Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. I'm your host, John Wachter. Let's get you informed. It's great to be back. I'm going to go ahead and call this the second season of Pro Football Informer. Didn't know that last season was going to be considered the first season. Didn't know I was going to do a season thing, but I was thinking about it, and it sounds a little more professional that way. Plus, I kind of want to put the next few episodes on SoundCloud. I've had some people ask me to do that. Until I figure out how to do that, or look into how to do that, though, this one's just going to be on YouTube like all the other ones. I figure the first season of Pro Football Informer started about midway through the season, the NFL season last year, so got to start super early this year, and just in time for the draft coming up in a couple days here, so that's what the podcast can be about today. Last few weeks, the draft got a lot more interesting, especially with the first two picks now completely different than what they were a couple weeks ago. Both the newly Los Angeles Rams and the still in Philadelphia, Eagles have traded up for the 1 and 2 spot. So lots of interesting things there. I wanted to have a guest on today. It just didn't work out, so hopefully I can get him here next week. But I'll get him on here eventually. Yeah, I definitely knows his stuff, and it'd be great to have him on here. But for now, it's just me, and hopefully that's not too bad of a thing. So this is just going to be a draft episode. I'm going to start off, I'm going to have a top 10 mock and explain why. I don't want to do a whole 32 because that would take hours, really, to explain every pick. And then I'm going to go over some other things, people with character issues, big question marks, and things like that. So we're going to run by here, and we're going to dive right into it. Let's go ahead. So 1 and 2, obviously, is going to be Goff and Wentz. Not sure if anybody knows for sure who's going to go first and who's going to go second, but they're 1 and 2, obviously. That said, I think that both of them are a stretch. Both of them very talented quarterbacks, but I don't think there was anybody coming out of this draft that was worthy of a number 1 pick quarterback-wise. The last quarterback I agreed with going number 1 overall was Andrew Luck, who coming off a bad season this past year, but I really think he's going to rebound. I think he's going to have a great year, but I'm not going to talk about that on here. So I think Goff is a better fit for the Rams, so that's also who I hear that they are going to be drafting. But I think Wentz is a better quarterback overall. I think both teams get a guy that can, if needed to, can start right away. I've heard rumbles that the Eagles want to bench whoever they have for at least the first year. But I think you do this trade, you pretty much have to. You've pulled the trigger at this point. You have to start them. It's very difficult to come into the league and start as a quarterback in your first year. That's something has not been going on for a long time. It used to be you give your guy a couple years to develop and learn the system. Now it's just they're throwing these guys in here, and then that's why you're seeing all these rookie quarterbacks not getting a second contract because they haven't had a chance to learn the system, especially with these early picks. You're in a tumultuous situation most of the time. Maybe the coaching jobs are a revolving door, things like that. So I feel for these guys, but you're getting paid millions of dollars, so I don't feel too much. But yeah, Goff and Wentz, pretty obviously those are the first 2 picks. I highly doubt the Eagles would trade up for anybody but a quarterback. That said, I don't like the trades for either of these teams, and I will talk briefly about that. I think both these teams gave up way too much for quarterbacks that, yes, they are a stretch, and no, they would not be there later in the draft. But they're you've given up your future for these guys, and I don't think either of these guys, I don't want to come across as rude, but I don't think either of these guys are deserving of throwing away your entire future for one guy. With that said, I'm looking right at Jeff Fisher now. This is the second time he's given up the number 1, or maybe the other time was number 2, but it's the second time he's given up a really early pick and gotten all these draft picks. And if he cannot build a team within the next couple years, I think he should be fired from the NFL forever. I know that's harsh, but he got all those picks with the Rams for trading with the Redskins and did pretty much nothing with it. Got fired. So yeah, you can't just keep going 7-9 and say, oh well, we beat the Seahawks a couple times. You got to turn in a winning football team at this point, especially with all these picks. You should be able to build a dynasty with it. And I know that's easier said than done, but that's why I'm not a head coach either. So, moving on. So Goff and Wentz, that's obvious. For me, everybody after that, the draft can go a multitude of ways, and I'm going to present a couple different scenarios, just because a lot of teams on this list have a lot of needs. That's why you're picking early. So I'm going to go over a couple of different scenarios with every team. But let me actually jump into it now. So number 3 pick is the San Diego. I got them drafting Jalen Ramsey, and this isn't surprising to me. This is not a very popular pick amongst other mock drafts. I see Laramie Tunsil a lot, which makes sense. Except that they already have King Dunlap, who, yes, is aging, is above the age of 30, had some injuries, but they just re-signed him. So I don't think it's as big of an issue. Even bigger on that front is that they lost Eric Weddle, who had a down year last year, was playing in a place that mutually they needed to get away from each other. But before that was a great safety. I think was an underrated free agent signing. So that's a glaring hole for them. They need to fill that secondary. That said, I also think Jalen Ramsey projects a lot better as a safety than he does as a corner. I think he can excel anywhere in the secondary, but a team that's taking him at corner, I don't want to say they're going to be let down, but his full potential is going to be reached if he is a safety, and that's what I personally project him as. So like I said, I think he would be a fantastic corner to come right into the league right away, but as a safety, he can already be a Pro Bowler, and I really do mean that. I think you're looking at a potential, defensive rookie of the year, especially when you're talking about a guy going first amongst defenders. So I think he's a great fit for San Diego. If they don't take him, the only other option is Tunsil at that point, and those two are probably the top on most people's draft boards. Have got Tunsil and Ramsey as the top two in either order. So those. Not a bad pick. Really, as long as you're sticking to those 2 picks, the Chargers can't go wrong. Number 4, Dallas's pick. I've got them taking Bosa, and I do see that happen often. I think it's their biggest need. They don't have Greg Hardy anymore. Obvious character issues, and the guys that they do have, Randy Gregory, another character issue. You got people that are suspended. The first 4 games. Even when they come back, you still need help. They need help rushing the passer, and Joey Bosa is a difference maker straight away. He can play immediately. He can make an impact immediately. The only other person I can see them taking here is the sexy pick, which is Ezekiel Elliott. To me, yes, that would be a great pick, and I would like that pick for them. Looking from the outside, but I think Bosa is a bigger help to this team. Most running backs can excel behind that line, and they showed that last year with Darren McFadden and Joseph Randle, and you can pretty much plug anybody in there, and they're going to have a good season. Now, Ezekiel Elliott would have a fantastic season. If he is to be drafted by the Cowboys, I'm calling it immediately that he's the offensive rookie of the year. I don't even need to watch the season to know that, but it's not their biggest issue. That said, Jerry Jones has given them the green light to do that pick. I'm not really sure how their front office works, but I would imagine he'd be the one making the picks. I don't know why he needs to greenlight somebody else to do it, but so with that said, I've got them taking Joey Bosa, number 4 overall. Number 5 is the Jacksonville Jaguars pick. In this particular situation, if Jalen Ramsey is to go to the Chargers, then that means that Laramie Tunsil is still there for the Jaguars. Now, this isn't necessarily their biggest need, but this is the best player available. They made a lot of noise in free agency, and I think this is going to be a very good team. Looking at them, they're a very interesting team. They have a ton. Going into free agency, they had a ton of cap room and not a lot of guys that needed to re-sign. They've just been taking care of it silently. And I've heard some rumblings of people that are finally starting to see that the Jaguars are a team that can compete in the next couple years. So you get Laramie Tunsil. This is an explosive offense. Maybe move Luke Jokel to the other side, or even move Tunsil to the other side. I mean, you got 2 great tackles at that point. You got a quarterback that can extend plays. Gets compared to Ben Roethlisberger all the time. And then you got explosions on that offense. You really do, and that's with Justin Blackman failing to be able to play because of his own issues. So imagine if he was still there. So it's a great offense, and they pretty much rebuilt their defense in free agency. They don't really need it as much. That said, I've seen them linked to Miles Jack, who is another guy that there's a lot of guys that get projected as the best overall guy, but Miles Jack I can understand just from an athleticism standpoint. There was a story going around that the Chargers were actually talking to him, potentially putting him at safety. So that just speaks for his coverage ability. But most people see him as an inside linebacker, and that'd be a smart pick for them as well. Miles Jack has been projected to go literally everywhere within the top 8, and I've never seen him fall lower than that. So I could see them taking Miles Jack, and if the Chargers are to take Tunsil, that might leave Ramsey there for the Jaguars. He doesn't make it past the Jaguars. Ramsey is going in the top 5 no matter what. So anyway, I'm not going to go over every single hypothetical situation. Number 6 is Baltimore's pick, coming off a terrible injury-riddled season. They're already that's the thing with them. They're a dangerous team, just based off the fact that there's already a lot of talent there. They had a good free agency period, more active than normal. Picked up Eric Weddle, picked up Mike Wallace. They're really trying to rebuild that team. Benjamin Watson even. So this Baltimore's a team to watch out for if they can stay healthy. And at number 6, they're going to have, no matter how the draft goes, they're going to have options for one of their top 4 guys on their draft board. And in my particular hypothetical, in my particular mock, I have them taking Miles Jack. And that's my personal favorite choice for them no matter what. I said, if Miles Jack and Joey Bosa are both available, they should still take Jack in that situation. The only guy I would take over Jack are Tunsil and Ramsey. The only person I could see falling that far is Tunsil if, of course, the Jaguars decide to go with Jack or if Ramsey falls to them. But, Miles Jack's the perfect complement to what they currently have going. They got rid of Darryl Smith. He was an aging veteran. I think they were looking to re-sign him, but he went elsewhere. So they have C.J. Mosley, who finished 2nd in Defensive Rookie of the Year his rookie season and was a Pro Bowler. Had a little bit of a bounce-back year, but I think it was his own greatness that made it look that way. He had such a great rookie season that even a good second season looked like it was a sophomore slump. That said, C.J. Mosley struggles in pass coverage. Very good against the run. He was a vocal leader in college, and he's going to be the cornerstone of the defense along with Miles Jack, whose strength is his coverage ability. Not to say that he can't stop the run, and he's not great at reading plays, but his main strength, like I said, he's been looked at as a potential safety. So, his main strength is the coverage, where C.J. Mosley, is not as great. And that's just, that's a perfect compliment to me. If I'm the Ravens, that's who I'm drafting. To me, that's number 1 on my board is the Ravens. But like I said, I can understand taking Ramsey or Tunsil. Other than that, I've also heard DeForest Buckner linked to them, but I think Miles Jack would just be the better pick here. I've also heard Hargreaves, but that's kind of if they're going to go Hargreaves, I could see them trading back a couple spots, tops. Like if the Browns wanted to trade up, but I don't think that he falls past the top 9. So if that's what they wanted to do, I would try to do a small trade back because he's kind of a stretch at 6. Moving on to 7, that's San Francisco's pick. 49ers are a huge wild card to me. They're the biggest wild card in the top 10 just because they need help just everywhere. They really need help everywhere. My pick for them is DeForest Buckner. A lot of people have him over Joey Bosa, but not me personally. He's bigger. He can be more disruptive, but I just think on a more consistent basis, Joey Bosa is going to be the better player. The knock against Bosa is his size. He's where exactly do you play him? But that said, having flexibility is not a bad thing, and he can always put on or drop a little bit of weight if needed to, in theory. But DeForest Buckner would be a great pick at 7. That's a good spot for him. That's not a stretch or anything like that. Also in play, Paxton Lynch could go to the 49ers, and that wouldn't necessarily be a bad pick for them, but I think Paxton Lynch is a stretch there. That said, with the top 2 quarterbacks going that early, they are huge stretches to me, so that's just how it works. The top 2 guys, if you want a top 3 guy, you're going to have to do a stretch to get them. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them get a guy like Paxton Lynch or even Ronnie Stanley, who I've actually heard some people say is a better prospect than Laramie Tunsil. I don't agree with that, but just choices there. Moving on to number 8. This is the only rejected trade that I have left in the top 10. I'm sure there will be more. I have the Browns trading back to Miami, and I know a lot of people are probably thinking, the Browns already traded back, but Miami is not a far back trade, and they can still get quality. So Cleveland could take a guy like Paxton Lynch or Hargreaves or even Stanley, or they could even go Ezekiel Elliott. These are all big needs for them. That said, they already have Duke Johnson, and I think that he's going to work great in that system. He's a nice dual threat running back, so I think that I mean, obviously you'd like to have Elliott there, but that's pretty much giving up on Johnson right away. And it's not, to me, it's not their biggest need. They have a lot of needs. Their biggest need right now is quarterback, probably. But I could see the argument. But I have them trading back, and the reason is they can stockpile even more picks. I'm not going to get a ton. You move back like 5 picks to Miami, who I believe is the 13th pick without looking at it. You move back 5 picks, and you're going to get a couple more people to draft in the mid rounds, maybe even like kind of like early mid of next year, depending on how it looks. And Miami absolutely loves Ezekiel Elliott, from what I've heard, and they can land him with this trade. They might have to trade more than what they want. The Browns are now in the driver's seat, and I'll talk about the Browns for a second. This new analytics-driven front office, I have a lot of as an AFC North rival fan, I have a lot of hope for this team. This is a team I've made fun of a lot. Everybody made fun of them a lot because it just seems like they never do anything correctly. But I think they were big winners in this trade, and I think that if they do a second trade, now you've got I can't imagine how many picks in the next few years. You can really rebuild a team that already has a couple of good pieces. And, as long as they draft well, this is a team that can compete within the next 3-4 years. So I have them trading back to Miami. Miami then takes Ezekiel Elliott, number 8. I'm not going to go that far back, but I do have the Browns still able to take Paxton Lynch with that 13th pick. Other mocks I've seen the Browns trade up to 6 to get Paxton Lynch in front of the 49ers. That's not how I see it playing out. If that's how it plays out, then so be it. I think Paxton Lynch is the right pick for the Browns, though. He's a good quarterback. He'll get time to develop. Nobody's expecting, the Browns to be in the playoffs or in the Super Bowl contention, in the next 2 years or anything like that. So you'll be able to, work with that. And then if Josh Gordon ever comes back, he'd have a great receiver to throw to, but I doubt that's ever going to happen. So just throwing some shade real quick. Moving on. Number 9, I got Hargreaves going to Tampa Bay, and I think this is a really good spot for him. He's undersized. That's his big knock. But the thing is, what is he? I can't even think of his dimensions. But you got guys like Brent Grimes that I'm sure is of similar size. Brent Grimes is only 5'10". Played great. He had that awesome interception against Calvin Johnson, the one-handed one. Actually, I have a picture of that. I'm not even a big Dolphins fan, but it looks so cool. I gotta make sure I got that framed and everything like that. So, just being undersized isn't necessarily the biggest problem to have, especially when this is the top rated corner in the draft this year. I think he grades out better as a corner than what Jalen Ramsey does. And I'm in the minority there. I just think he has better coverage abilities. He's great in coverage. Tampa Bay needs a playmaker in their secondary. They need to force more turnovers, and that's exactly what they'll be able to get with this pick. I can't see them going anywhere else with this pick, and I see it being here 100%. So the 10th and final of my mock is for the Giants. I got them taking Ronnie Stanley, and I think this is perfect spot for Ronnie Stanley. Once again, I don't think this is a stretch, and I don't think it'd be considered a steal per se, but maybe a mini steal because I think he's a top 7 or so prospect, but then you got the 2 quarterbacks up front that aren't, and it's just, but this is a good spot for him. He's really big. I think he's like 6'6", over 300 pounds. Just a huge guy to be able to keep Eli Manning upright. At the 10 spot, like I said, I wouldn't call him a steal, but I wouldn't call him a reach either. And very high ceiling. Like I said, some people actually have him over Tunzel. I don't, but some people do, just because of his size. He needs to work on his fundamentals a bit better, is his thing. And you can teach fundamentals, you can teach fundamentals, but you can't teach size. Stanley already has the size over Tunzel. Tunzel already has the fundamentals. It'll be interesting to see, looking 4 years from now when they're both going for their second contracts, just to see how they grade it out. I think they're both going to be great. I think they're both going to have successful careers. Early in the mock drafts, I saw Laquan Treadwell's name come up here, but he was unimpressive in his combine. I don't think there's a wide receiver available that is more than a top 20 talent in this draft, which is it's strange. And I'll transition straight to that. We've been spoiled the past few years with guys, like Odell Beckham, guys like that, that Amari Cooper, you could list them for a while there. Just very good. Even going back to Sammy Watkins, Anyway, just good receivers coming out of the draft that come out immediately good, which is something that doesn't normally happen. Before that, the best. Randy Moss had a great rookie year, but other than that, it takes a year or two to develop to the speed of the NFL to get your route running down. You got bigger defenders pressing you up, so that's fairly new that wide receivers are coming out and immediately being rookie of the year, just putting up over 1,000 yards, putting up 10 touchdowns, just crazy good stats. That's a new thing, and that's not something we're going to see this year. That said, there are still some good wide receivers in this draft class. You got guys like Corey Coleman, Laquan Treadwell, of course, Will Fuller. You've got guys that, and I still think anywhere between 2 and 4 wide receivers are going to go in the first round. But there's going to be a run on them. It's going to be around number 20. I think the Redskins go and get Treadwell. Fuller's a perfect fit for the Texans, just take the top off it. And I don't want to go all the way back and, do the whole mock draft. Maybe I'll do that text-based, but I'm not going to do that here. So there's definitely talent there, and it goes deep. Even guys in early to mid-second round are be able to get a top wide receiver prospect. But that's what they are. They're prospects. They're not going to come in and immediately change the game. So for me, and I wanted to, do a little debate on who's the best wide receiver. I still think it's Laquan Treadwell. And I'm actually very surprised that his stock fell so far from his slow 40 time. I thought that was implied. I thought when you watch the guy, that's not his strong suit. He's still the top wide receiver in the class. I've seen people in mocks have like Corey Coleman in front of him, for instance. That's an exciting pick, Corey Coleman, but the consistent hands is what I'm looking for. If I'm a GM and I'm looking to draft a wide receiver, that's the number one for me. Great hands, great body control, route running. I'm looking for all that before speed and explosiveness, unless I'm looking for that exact style player. But in the first round, I'm not looking for a guy like Corey Coleman. And I think whatever team does draft him is going to get a great, player, but I think they're also going to get a frustrating player to watch. So Laquan Treadwell, that's my number one wide receiver still. And now I'm going to transition, go over some guys with question marks, either from character issues or injuries. Just a couple guys that I thought were interesting in this. And I'll talk about them for a tiny bit, and then I'll just I'll end it there. So Noah Spence, where does Noah Spence go? I've seen him go in mocks. I've seen him go late first. I've seen him go early second. I've seen him fall all the way to the third round. To me, this guy's character issues are completely overblown. He had problems, yeah. So noted problems, but this whole past year, he stayed out of trouble. He went into addictions counseling for, I believe, ecstasy. He's doing the correct things. You got to give a guy like that a chance to get better instead of judging based off of that. And I think whoever does get him is going to get a steal. This is a top 15 talent to me, and he's not going to go top 15. He might not even go top 30. Whoever takes a risk with him, and preferably he goes to a good locker room with strong leadership, but I think maybe these character issues are a little bit overstated. So I don't have an exact team he's going to go to. Just like everybody on this list, I pretty much don't have an exact team. But, yeah, so I think whoever does wind up taking him, and I think he'll go in the second round. I don't think he'll fall to the third, but how late in the second, I'm not sure. So yeah, that's my opinions on him. I also want to talk about Derrick Henry because I feel like this guy is extremely underrated. This guy he's a running back the size of like Von Miller. He's like 240-something, almost 250 pounds. He reminds me of Brandon Jacobs, who I was a huge fan of. I don't know. I wasn't super into like football media at that point, but I was still watching. I was like, this guy's just a bruiser. He's just gonna lower his shoulder and just make you not want to tackle him. That's what Derrick Henry is. He's projected as the second best running back in the draft. He just came off a Heisman year. He's been nothing but successful. I don't see him projected in anybody's first round mock draft, except there was one. There was one where he went to the Panthers at the very end, which I don't know if that's even a good fit for them. I mean, he's going to be a good fit anywhere. The thing is, I can understand he had a very heavy workload last year, and his size difference isn't going to be as obvious in the NFL. But he's still the same size as, like I said, like Von Miller, like outside linebackers. He's going to destroy anybody. If he gets into the open field, a corner's not going to want to tackle him. You're going to see this corner's going to go flying. It's going to look like a like when you're in high school and you're playing football with your little brother's friends that are in middle school and you're just destroying them. I don't, maybe that was just me that did that because I couldn't beat people my own age because I'm smaller than them. But that's how Derrick Henry's going to be. And to me, my best projection for him, if he goes to Dallas in the second round, it'd be early second round. Some people would call it a stretch. I call it a steal. He goes to Dallas in the second round, and just like if Ezekiel Elliott did, he's in talks for Rookie of the Year at that point. And he's gonna have a great. He's gonna make some great highlights. If he goes to a team with a good front line, he can really make some noise. One of the things I see on him is like if the space isn't there, can he get creative? Can he make the right cuts and things like that? But I've seen plenty. It's not like he's slow either. I mean, I've seen plenty of clips where, that is coming out of college where everybody's a little bit slower than in the NFL, but. I'm not gonna say he's better than Ezekiel Elliott, but I'm gonna say he's not as far away as everybody's trying to make it seem. Like Elliott's so much better than him. They're both gonna have successful careers. Next up, I'm gonna talk about Robert Kimdichie, and yes, I did put down how to say that on my notes, just so I didn't look like a fool. Uber talented guy. Stats really not there actually, even though he was voted, he gets the praise he deserves for his high level of play. Stats aren't there. He's not showing up on the stat sheet. Maybe it's consistency issues. Maybe teams are just working around. I don't know. His major problem. I think teams are willing to look past the stats, especially in college. His major problem is that he ended his collegiate career with drug problems. It was just marijuana, and I have my own opinions on whether or not that should be banned, but that's not what the discussion is. It's obvious it's banned, and much like Josh Gordon, who I took a shot at earlier, it's just stop. Like, you're going to get, especially in his case, because you're going to get tested for it, especially if you have already been an offender. Just stop. Like, is your career not worth it? Or, to me, my career, where I'm playing a game as a job, and I'm making a lot more money than anybody else is going to see. That's more important to me than getting high, with my friends or whatever. You can wait. You can retire. You can even retire early. You can retire at 26 and go do that for the rest of your life. To me, that's the easy ultimatum, but that's a tangent that I just went off on. This is likely the top defensive tackle in the draft. But he's the ultimate banger bust. It's is his work ethic going to be there? Is he going to be able to put up the stats in the NFL? Any team that takes a chance on him is taking a big chance. And, so moving on, because I get heated over the people that are throwing their careers away for recreational drug use. But moving on to Jalen Smith. This is the saddest story in the whole draft. To me, I don't know. I think to everybody. This was once a consensus top 5 pick. Got injured in his very last game, a bowl game. Just completely destroyed his knee. Just gruesome injury. Sucked to see. You see it and you were like, that's going to be bad. He's probably, I don't know if it's confirmed, but he's pretty much missing this year. And it's even a thought that he might not ever get to play again. That said, medical technology has come a long way, and I want to believe that he's going to be able to have a career here. That said, he used to be a top top 5 pick. Now he's a late third or late fourth. I've seen he might not get drafted at all. But the consensus is he's a third, fourth, fifth type round guy. Teams are going to be scared to draft him because, like I said, he might never play again. It's just such a bad injury that everybody's just terrified to, and you'd be taking a chance with him. But there are teams, especially if he falls to the 4th round, where the compensatory picks start to come into play. Teams like Baltimore, especially if Baltimore doesn't get Miles Jack, I think they pull the trigger here. You are. It's a pretty low risk move, with a potentially very high ceiling if he can come back full strength, which is asking for a lot. But if you're in the 4th, 5th round, you're not going to get a stud most of the time there. There's exceptions, but you can find a guy like this that can potentially be a stud after a year. I'd pull the trigger on that. So those are my interesting stories. I just want to go over some underrated players real quick before we get out of here. These are just I've been looking up a lot of stories into this draft. I really love the draft. It's one of my favorite times in the whole offseason. I love it more than free agency. Free agency is mostly the first few days people get way overpaid, and then everybody else kind of goes under the radar unless you're looking for them. But the draft, what is it, like a 3-day event. It's just super fun. I go out to Buffalo Wild Wings with some friends and watch the first 2 rounds. It's a good time. That's just me. Anyway, so here's some of my most underrated players. Any running back not named Henry or Elliott, for example, is not getting any publicity. But I want to talk about one guy in particular. There you go. Is Devontae Booker. Injuries are holding him back, just like a lot of people that are falling on this list, but he's going to be a guy that's playing this year. He couldn't run the 40, so that's holding him back as well, so he didn't get to show off, any of that. But he's speedy, he's elusive, and the thing I like about most is that he's a dual threat back. He's got great hands. I think he had something like 80 receptions last year. Of course, he's not going to hit that in the NFL, most likely. The only person I could possibly see doing that is a guy like Matt Forte, and maybe a couple years ago. Even now, he's too old to be doing all that probably. But yeah, dual threat running back, can play every down. Coming off an injury, but it's a minor injury. Injuries happen. He's projected late second, early third. He's going to be a bargain there. I think he's immediate. Even if he's a backup, he's going to be able to make some noise. He's going to be a change of pace guy, a guy you can put in on third down, a Duke Johnson type guy that I mentioned earlier for the Browns. I think I'm Duke Johnson's biggest fan, even though that's not really my team to follow. I don't know, those dual threat backs, especially in a pass-heavy league now, definitely something you got to look out for. The whole defensive tackle class is underrated to me. Many guys, including Vernon Butler, Malik Collins, Chris Jones, are going to go day 2 or even later. There's just a lot of potential difference makers there that aren't being talked about. And I'm not going to talk about any of them either specifically. But just look out for them. If your team gets... There's a lot of value to be had. And defensive tackle is a position like that historically. It's just... they're mostly run stuffers, other than, high-profile, high-name guys like, Ndamukong Suh and, Haloti Ngata, or, you don't really hear about them as much, but they make a huge difference on the football field. You got to get yourself a good one. You can find them on day 2 or 3. Any general managers listening to me, day 2 or 3, look out for them. And one more guy I want to talk about, because it's kind of close to my heart, because he's a small guy like me, Jonathan Jones. Great all-around cornerback. This guy can literally do it all. He's strong. He put in 19 reps at 225, which is... I wish I had notes on his weight, but it's got to be either more than what he weighs, or I would imagine it's a good amount more than what he weighs. He's got really good coverage ability and hands too. Like great. Like watching his tape, he really stands out. His only downfall is that he is, they say, a courteous 5'9", so he's probably closer to 5'8". So yes, but like I said, Brent Grimes was only 5'10", so but I can see the argument. Going against like 6'2" wide receivers, that's going to be a huge problem. But this guy has a very good vertical as well to make up for it. Yes, he's going to lose jump balls to other tall guys that have good verticals, but that's why he's not going in the first few rounds. He's likely going to be very late. He's likely going to be after the 4th round. I would take him in the 5th round if I'm a general manager, and I think he's going to be a solid contributor. Maybe you put him in the slot, especially against teams that use smaller receivers, more shifty receivers in the slot, like the Patriots. Like to use, Wes Welker in the past, Julian Edelman, people like that. He's going to match up well against guys like that. And I'm not saying he's the most shifty guy, and I'm not saying he's the top at anything in this draft, but I think he's severely underrated. I think he's a top 3 round talent. I'd take him, just based off of where he is. But born small, you can't fix that. You got, if you can't grow any more than what genetics will allow you to do. So he's going to play with a chip on his shoulder too. That's something I want to point out. Guys like that, who are told that they're too small to play in this league, they play with a chip on their shoulder. He feels like teams don't believe in him. He's got to show them it's time to believe. And no, he's not going to win Defensive Rookie of the Year. He might never make a Pro Bowl team, whatever. But especially like in the 5th, 6th round, you take a guy that can immediately contribute and can really benefit your team. You got to pull the trigger. He's not just a special teams guy, though. I can see him play there as well. This is one of my favorite players in the draft. I don't know. I was doing my research, and that's the guy that really stood out to me. Watch his tape. He's a good player. Any team that gets him, like I said, he might be a bit small to play on the outside, but even then, you can still play him there. He plays very well. So I'm going to go ahead and end it here. I hope you guys enjoyed listening. I wish I was a little better at formatting so that I went off on a stronger note. But, I'll work on that throughout this season, the second season of Pro Football Informer. And also I'm working on getting some theme music. I just got to figure out how to do it without getting copyrighted. So look out for that. So anyway, until then, I'll see you guys next time. I'm going to make sure this is a weekly thing. I promise this time. I promise. So this is going to be a weekly thing. I'll see you guys next week. Have a great day, and thank you for listening.